I am 112 years old. At 75, I was dying. Not from any single disease, but from what doctors called the inevitable decline of aging. My memory was failing so badly, I forgot my own grandson's name. I'd walk into rooms and stand there, lost, wondering what I'd come for. Simple conversations became impossible mazes where I'd lose the thread of what we were talking about mid-sentence. The specialists had labels for it. Mild cognitive impairment, they said. Early-stage dementia, they whispered. They gave me medications with names I couldn't pronounce and side effects that made me feel like a stranger in my own body. My children were already discussing assisted living facilities, speaking in hushed tones when they thought I couldn't hear. So I prepared myself. I sorted my belongings into boxes marked keep and donate, and I told myself this was simply how stories like mine ended. And then my neighbour Ruth knocked on my door. We had attended the same church for 40 years, but I hadn't really seen her in months. She looked remarkably sharp for someone I knew was pushing 90. She sat at my kitchen table, made us both tea, and said something that changed everything. "Samuel, your mind isn't broken, it's just starving." She told me about 5 foods from the Bible. She also told me something else, something I'll share at the very end, because without it, the food means almost nothing. That was 37 years ago. I am still here, living independently, my mind clear as mountain water. My memory is better now than it was at 60. Here is what she told me. 1. Pomegranates, the fruit that crowned Solomon's temple. When God gave instructions for the design of his temple, he specified that the hem of the high priest's robe should be decorated with pomegranates. Not grapes, not olives, pomegranates. The ancient world understood something we've forgotten. This fruit was sacred because it was medicine for the mind. Inside every pomegranate are hundreds of seeds, each one surrounded by a jewel-like membrane packed with compounds called anthocyanins and ellagic acid. These substances cross the blood-brain barrier, something most nutrients cannot do, and they work directly to protect your brain cells from the oxidative damage that clouds thinking and steals memories. Ruth explained it to me this way. Your brain is constantly under attack from free radicals, unstable molecules that damage the delicate structures where your memories are stored. Most foods can't reach your brain to help. Pomegranates can. They carry their protective compounds directly to the neurons that hold your thoughts, your memories, your sense of who you are. I started eating half a pomegranate every morning, not the sugary juice from bottles, the actual fruit, seeds and all. The process of eating it became a meditation. Each seed required attention, intention. Within 6 weeks, something shifted. The fog that had been settling over my thoughts began to lift. I could follow conversations again. I remembered where I'd put my keys. The fear that had been growing in my chest, the terror of losing myself piece by piece, began to ease. The science, as Ruth taught me, is remarkable. Studies have shown that regular pomegranate consumption can improve memory formation by up to 35%. It increases blood flow to the brain, supports the growth of new neural connections, and protects existing brain tissue from inflammation. For aging minds, it's not just food, it's restoration. Get the whole fruit. Learn to eat it properly, 1 seed at a time. Don't rush it. Your brain needs time to register what you're giving it. This isn't just nutrition. This is medicine that tastes like joy. 2. Walnuts, the nut that mirrors the mind. Look at a walnut without its shell. Really look at it. It resembles the human brain so perfectly, it's almost unsettling. The 2 halves, the wrinkled surface that looks exactly like brain tissue. The ancient world called this the doctrine of signatures, the belief that God shaped foods to show us what they were meant to heal. Modern science has proven that ancient intuition correct. Walnuts are the richest plant source of DHA, omega-3 fatty acids, the same fats that make up 60% of your brain tissue. Your brain cannot manufacture these fatty acids on its own. They must come from food. And when your brain doesn't get enough, it literally begins to shrink. The neurons in your brain are wrapped in protective sheaths made largely from omega-3 fats. When these sheaths break down from deficiency, your thoughts slow down, your memory falters, your ability to learn new things diminishes. Depression often follows, not because life becomes harder, but because your brain lacks the physical materials it needs to produce the chemicals that create emotional balance. Ruth told me to eat a handful of walnuts every single day, raw, unsalted, unprocessed. Just walnuts, the way they grew on the tree. I did. Within a month, not only was my memory sharper, but my mood stabilized in a way it hadn't in years. The low-grade anxiety that had been my constant companion since my cognitive decline began simply disappeared. Clinical trials have shown that people who eat walnuts regularly perform significantly better on memory tests, have improved processing speed, and show measurably increased brain volume on imaging studies. This isn't subtle. This is dramatic, documentable brain improvement that you can feel within weeks. I keep a small bowl of walnuts on my kitchen counter, every morning with my pomegranate, every evening before bed. My brain has been thanking me for 37 years. 3. Blueberries, the berry that saved a kingdom. When Ezekiel had his vision of the new temple, he saw trees bearing fruit every month, fruit whose leaves were for the healing of the nations. Bible scholars believe he was describing what we now call superfruits, foods so nutritionally dense they could literally heal populations. Blueberries are the closest thing we have to that vision. Every blueberry contains more than 15 different anthocyanin compounds, the same protective substances found in pomegranates, but in different combinations. These compounds don't just protect your brain cells, they actively encourage the growth of new neural pathways. They help your brain rewire itself, even in old age, even after damage has been done. The most remarkable thing about blueberries is how quickly they work. Studies have shown measurable improvements in memory and cognitive function within just 2 hours of consumption. 2 hours. Your brain responds to these compounds almost immediately, like it's been waiting for them, like it recognizes them as exactly what it needs. Ruth brought me a pint of fresh blueberries that first week and told me to eat a handful every day. Not in muffins, not in pancakes, not cooked into anything that would destroy their delicate compounds. Just blueberries, fresh or frozen, eaten by the handful like nature's candy. The change was remarkable, not just in memory, but in mental energy. That 3 o'clock mental fatigue that had been dragging me down for years simply vanished. My thoughts stayed sharp throughout the entire day. I could read books again, really read them, follow complex plots, remember characters' names from chapter to chapter. Blueberries improve communication between brain cells. They reduce inflammation in brain tissue. They support the production of new neurons, something scientists once thought was impossible in aging brains. If you're going to do one thing for your mind today, eat blueberries. 4. Dark leafy greens, the vegetables that built empires. When Daniel and his friends were brought to serve in King Nebuchadnezzar's court, they refused the king's rich foods and asked for vegetables and water instead. After 10 days, they looked healthier and stronger than all the other young men who had eaten the royal diet. Those vegetables were likely what we would recognize as kale, spinach, and other dark leafy greens. The ancient world understood that these plants were power food for both body and mind. Modern research has proven them right in ways that would have amazed even those ancient nutritionists. Dark leafy greens are loaded with folate, vitamin K, lutein, and beta-carotene, nutrients that work together to protect your brain from age-related decline. Folate is essential for the production of neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that carry thoughts and emotions between brain cells. Vitamin K supports cognitive flexibility, your ability to switch between different mental tasks efficiently. But what makes dark leafy greens truly special for aging brains is lutein. This compound accumulates specifically in brain tissue, where it acts like internal sunglasses, protecting your neurons from the oxidative damage that gradually steals mental clarity. People with higher lutein levels in their brains perform significantly better on memory tests and show less age-related cognitive decline. Ruth taught me to eat dark leafy greens every single day, not as a side dish or an afterthought, but as the foundation of at least one meal. A large salad with spinach and kale, steamed collard greens with olive oil and lemon, sautéed Swiss chard with garlic. Simple preparations that preserved all the nutrients while making them delicious. The effect was gradual but unmistakable. My mental energy became more stable. I could concentrate for longer periods without feeling drained. Complex problems that once overwhelmed me became manageable again. My brain was getting the raw materials it needed to repair and rebuild itself. Studies have shown that people who eat just one serving of dark leafy greens per day have brains that function as if they were 11 years younger than people who rarely eat these vegetables. 11 years. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between independence and dependence. 5. Turmeric, the spice that healed prophets. When the wise men brought gifts to the infant Jesus, they brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But throughout the ancient world, there was another spice considered equally precious: turmeric. Traditional healers used it to treat everything from wounds to digestive problems to what they called diseases of the spirit, conditions we might now recognize as depression and cognitive decline. The active compound in turmeric is curcumin, one of the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory substances ever studied. And here's what most people don't understand. Almost all age-related cognitive decline begins with inflammation in the brain. Your immune system, trying to protect you from decades of accumulated damage, creates chronic inflammation that slowly destroys the very brain tissue it's trying to save. Curcumin crosses the blood-brain barrier and works directly to calm this destructive inflammation. It also stimulates the production of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which encourages the growth of new brain cells and new connections between existing cells. It's like fertilizer for your mind. Ruth taught me to take turmeric seriously, not just as a flavor in curry, but as daily medicine. A teaspoon of high-quality turmeric powder mixed with black pepper and a little coconut oil every morning. The black pepper contains piperine, which increases the absorption of curcumin by over 2,000%. Without it, most of the turmeric just passes through your system without being absorbed. Within weeks of starting this daily routine, I noticed something remarkable. The mental inflammation I didn't even realize I'd been carrying began to ease. My thoughts became clearer, more organized. The brain fog that had been my constant companion for years lifted like morning mist. I could think through complex problems again without feeling exhausted. Clinical studies have shown that curcumin can improve memory, reduce symptoms of depression, and even help clear the protein plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. This isn't folk medicine. This is serious, scientifically validated brain protection that you can take every single day. Now, I promised you something at the end. I told you Ruth shared a secret, something beyond the food. And I need you to hear this because without it, the 5 foods I just described will nourish your brain, but they won't restore your spirit. When Ruth sat at my kitchen table that day, she looked at me very carefully and asked a question that stopped me cold. She said, "Samuel, when did you stop learning?" I didn't understand what she meant at first. She said it again. "When did you decide you were done growing, done discovering, done becoming?" And then I understood. Somewhere in my 70s, I had unconsciously decided that my learning days were over. I had stopped reading challenging books. I had stopped asking questions about things I didn't understand. I had stopped seeking out new experiences, new people, new ideas. I had settled into routines that required nothing of my mind except to remember what I'd always known. Ruth said to me very quietly, "Your brain is dying because you've stopped feeding it challenges. You've stopped giving it reasons to stay sharp." She was right. I had been living on autopilot, and my brain had responded by gradually shutting down non-essential functions. Use it or lose it isn't just a saying, it's neuroscience. She gave me an assignment that day, something to do alongside the food changes. She told me to learn something completely new, something that would stretch my mind in directions it had never gone before, something that would require me to be a beginner again. I chose piano. At 75, I walked into a music store and signed up for lessons. My instructor was younger than my grandson, and I was terrified of looking foolish. But something magical happened when I sat down at those keys for the first time. My brain lit up like it hadn't in years. The challenge of reading music, coordinating my hands, remembering fingerings, it was like waking up parts of my mind that had been sleeping. Learning new skills forces your brain to create new neural pathways. It strengthens connections between different brain regions. It builds what neuroscientists call cognitive reserve, a buffer of brain function that protects you against age-related decline. The more challenging the learning, the stronger the protection. But there's something else, something even more important than the cognitive benefits. When you're learning something new, really learning, struggling with it, gradually improving, you remember what it feels like to grow. You remember that you're not a finished product, that you're still becoming. That sense of possibility, of potential, of future growth is life itself. I've been playing piano for 37 years now. I'm not good, but I'm better than I was yesterday, and that's everything. I also learnt Spanish, took up woodworking, studied astronomy, learnt to paint watercolors. Not because I had natural talent for any of these things, but because my brain needed the challenge like my lungs need air. Find something that intimidates you a little, something you've always wanted to learn but told yourself you were too old for. Start tomorrow. Your brain doesn't care how old you are. It only cares whether you're giving it interesting problems to solve. Viktor Frankl wrote that everything can be taken from a person, but one thing: the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances. You cannot change what has already happened to your brain, but you can decide what happens next. You can choose to feed it, challenge it, believe in its capacity for renewal. Start with the pomegranates, add the walnuts, eat your blueberries and your dark leafy greens. Take your turmeric every morning with black pepper and coconut oil. These things are real. They will nourish your brain. They will protect your memory. They will help your mind remember what it's capable of. But also look honestly at what you've stopped doing. What challenges have you been avoiding? What learning have you been postponing? Your brain is not a machine that wears out. It's a living system that grows stronger with use, that builds new connections throughout your entire life if you give it reasons to. Mental decline is not inevitable. Brain fog is not a normal part of aging. Memory loss is not something you have to accept. Feed your brain the nutrients it needs. give it the challenges it craves, and watch what happens when your mind remembers its own power. Ruth gave me 5 foods and 1 truth. The foods fed my brain. The truth set it free. Eat well, learn constantly, never stop becoming. That is all I know. That is everything. I am Samuel Wright. I am 112 years old, and my mind is sharper today than it was at 60. The information shared in this video reflects personal experience and is intended for educational and inspirational purposes only. Please consult your physician or a qualified healthcare provider before making significant changes to your diet, especially if you are managing chronic conditions or taking medications.